The Hows and Whys of Human Behaviour by George A. Dorsey, PhD, author of Why We Behave Like Human Beings. We found this in the public domain, public access, so no copyright infringement was intentional, and we bring it to all for educational purposes alone. It does contain a lot of information on everyday life and the problems that we go through from infancy, childhood to adulthood and so forth, as well as pointing to some biblical scriptures, etc. The Hows and Whys of Human Behaviour by George A. Dorsey, PhD. Contents page. Going to have a look at a few of these chapters. What every mother should know. We've touched on them briefly. What should every newborn have? How do you get that way? How much of your brain do you use? We'll provide sections on those we think interesting. Preface. Why do we do so and so? How do we get this way or that? What should we do to be thus and so? Such are the eternal riddles of human behaviour. Some of the most important of these riddles have been propounded to the author by the editors of the Cosmopolitan and American magazines. And this book represents the attempt to solve them in terms of common understanding and common sense. The solutions, however, are not to be thought of as final or complete, or the overall answer to all your problems you've ever had, or as entirely satisfactory to the author. There is nothing simple about human nature or inhuman lives, nor can an account of any human act be considered complete or final so long as biology, physiology and psychology continue to be living sciences. The riddle of sleep, for example, has busied the author at odd times for many years and sent him questioning to some of the world's great physiologists. Sleep remains a mystery of very considerable magnitude, nor was the author at all satisfied that he knew what was wrong with his own mind. Indeed, he gravely doubted that he has one at all. But he was taught to behave like a human being, and therefore took this opportunity, when he wrote this book, to thank other people involved, giving him that permission to reprint articles from the Cosmopolitan and American magazines. George A. Dorsey, New York City, January 1929. Okay, we're going to skip this chapter on being a born gambler because it's quite lengthy. Informative but very lengthy. I'm going to jump to this chapter. Chapter 2, What Should Every Mother Know? And we're going to touch on that briefly. And he writes, he wondered at the time how many mothers the year before this was written named their unborn offspring Charles Lindbergh, only to find out it was a girl, or how many thought that by praying, wishing or thinking they could exert such an influence over their unborn child that it would inevitably develop a Lindbergh character. The author knew of at least one mother who thought she could, and it was a boy. She gave birth to a boy, and she just knows he would grow into a sturdy, fearless lad destined to emulate the popular hero he was named after. How do you know? Because. That's what he asked her. Now, why do we call because a woman's reason? Because she often speaks from feelings and convictions, which she has no glib word reply. Because becomes a shortcut for, I can't put it into words, but all that I know leads me to a belief so strongly that I feel it must be so. So it was that our great-grandmothers knew many things that are not so, as for example that the earth was flat, that a child born with a blue vein on one side of his nose was sure to drown, and that if a child's nose repaired before it was a year old it would become a thief, but if thereafter its nose repaired over the family Bible it would as surely be honest. Why? Because. Why can no mother, or for that matter no physician, predict the sex of the unborn child? because she cannot. But she, and the physician, can guess right 50% of the time, and 50-50 is enough for most mothers and some physicians. Why can no mother or anybody predict the fate of her unborn child? Because neither mother nor anyone can predict the future, and hence cannot predict the day-by-day endless stream of influences which will so mould the child that it will bend easily to one breeze and straighten up to another. Our grandmothers collectively knew thousands of rules, formulas and rites, the observance or neglect of which predestined the child to this or that career, character or personality. But they overlooked one important point. There was a flaw in their reasoning. Did the boy whose baby nails were pared become a thief just because of the violation of a family superstition, or because of other factors which made theft more or less inevitable? They did not inquire into that. The fingernail is, of course, only one of countless superstitions which served over our credulous grandmothers as a cloak for their ignorance. Another equally faulty reason why a boy grew up a thief was that the sins of fathers are handed on to sons. Even to the third generation, he had inherited the trait from father. It was in the blood. Why does any son ever become a thief? Why don't all boys grow into Lincolns, Abraham Lincolns, or Charles Lindberghs? Who is responsible? And this reminded the author of an incident which occurred a winter prior to this book being written. He had just finished a lecture before a mother's club in which he had stressed certain obligations of motherhood and so forth. An irate woman sailed up to the platform and shot this at him. "That's just like you men, putting the responsibility on the mother." To which he could only reply that he had no more put responsibility on motherhood than had astronomers put the rings around Saturn. But he did point out that once these rings were discovered, man could revise his almanac, and possibly a biological concept of motherhood might help us revise our social calendar. And he continues on that. And he put here that he could see how the father of the child can become a hobo, a drunkard, a criminal or a lunatic, but he could see no way by which such traits can become registered in the offspring. Those traits are not transmissible, they are not inherited from either parent, or at any rate he did not see how they can be. He could see how an alcoholic mother could influence fetal development through the alcohol in the blood, and he could see how a father or a mother might have such defective brain structure as to make quite normal behaviour impossible, and how such defect might be transmitted. But insanity, as that term is usually understood, is not a heritable trait, nor is criminality, drunkenness or unsocial behaviour. So he's saying it's not in your DNA, it's not genetic, it's not traditional, that sort of stuff. But he could see no way whereby a mother can bring any influence whatsoever to bear on the mental development, character or emotional disposition of her unborn child. He could see how any mother can so condition her child that it would likely become a moron, a criminal or insane, or an insane criminal moron. Believing that, the author need not make hereditary a catch-all for his ignorance as to why, for instance, a particular party which is now in jail. And continues with that. And he then states that he knew personally two young women who went through their first childbirth without great pain or distress. Both had led active lives since childhood, were accustomed to long walks and to such exercise as comes from tennis and golf. Both continued to lead active lives up to the time of delivery. In fact, one went from a dance to the hospital, and in a few days was as normal as she naturally should be. Equally significant is the evidence that among so-called savage peoples, woman is not the weaker but the stronger, more vigorous sex. She lives longer and can endure more. More boys are born than girls, yet an adult census shows more women than men. This holds good, so far as is known, through the human race. We deliberately coddle women and make it practically impossible for them to be as rugged as boys. They actually become the weaker sex, and then we call them the weaker sex. But nothing that we can find in higher animals or in the human race gives us grounds for inferring that the female is naturally weaker or inferior. On the contrary, the fact that nature put the larger burden on her is evidence that nature finds fitted her to bear it. And he states how he knew of 2 children with their mothers. He observed them. One was a girl of 7. She was more of a tyrant than Nero ever dreamed of being. She ruled one father, 1 mother, 1 grandmother, 1 aunt, and 3 servants. She really rules. She really ruled. Her whim was law. Then too she had been pampered, so pampered and coddled physically that the first winter wind blows her over. For 2 years she has been in the dentist's hands, but all his ingenuity and skill will never be able to make up for the jaws which have had no opportunity to develop, or for teeth which have had nothing harder to work on than an all-day sucker or lollipop, that sort of thing. The boy is of the same age. He is even worse off than the girl, because the world at large will readily put up with his whims and pettiness than it will with hers. There is no reason why the world should, but the world does. The world did. This boy also is a tyrant. He is quite devoid of what we call manners. He has been so pampered, indulged, fondled and spoiled that the natural manhood we expect to find in a boy of 7 has had no chance to develop. These 2 youngsters are typical of why thousands and thousands of young men and young women, and middle-aged men and women, and old men and women fail. They cannot stand on their feet against a gale because they never learned to stand on their own feet in a breeze. So basically, snowflakes. You know what the Apostle Paul said about putting away childish things? But did he? Did he really say it? The plain fact is that we do not put away childish things. The mother who recognises the significance of that fact can prepare her boy or girl for the hard knocks of life. The hard knocks do not always or necessarily come, but the point is that if and when they come to children such as the author has just mentioned, they have no adequate comeback. There are thousands of men who literally never learn to get along from their mother's apron strings. Their mothers may be dead, but in every crisis they revert to childish ways. And if it is a real crisis, childish ways do not get them ribbons. The results are upsets in business, countless upsets in marriage, and pitiable upsets ending in insanity. Biologically, the mother is responsible for so bringing up her child that when adolescence comes, that child can fly from the nest and start one of its own, and start it on its own economic, social, moral and physical resources. But the mother who assumes this responsibility wisely must realise that the child learns to walk alone only by walking alone. This is not an easy thing for an average mother to teach. Her babe is not only all that nature intended it to be, it is all that human society has invented to wrap a baby bunting in. The mother becomes so emotionally wrought up over her child that it is not easy for her to see it with the naked eye or give it the chance it needs. The consequence is that mothers can, and often literally do, make use of their children to gratify their own whims, vanities, conceits, prejudices and passions. Neither mother of the 2 children that the author spoke of realised what she was doing for her child. He suspected that both would be grossly insulted if he told her that they are spoiling their children because they were not and are not willing to take a stand, and so forth. And he did cover something on okay, we already covered that, the fingernail. Chapter 3. What should every newborn have? Every newborn babe should have parents to teach it and a social environment to give it a chance. Otherwise it will not behave like a human being. For human behaviour is made and not born. But every normal newborn is fit to learn and, generally speaking, can learn anything. You yourself may be convinced that you could learn anything, or you may not. But the author can aid you to analyse yourself with the hope of discovering why, for example, you can't get as many votes as Coolidge, play tennis as well as Helen Wills, write as well as Kathleen Norris, crack jokes as well as Will Rogers, or shed as much light as Thomas Edison. The babe is potentially a genius or a scoundrel, an ornament to society and a joy to its parents, or an outcast from society and a calamity to its parents. You, and also the author, and myself, could also begin as babes, and if we can make an analysis of the forces or factors or mechanisms which collectively conspire to make or break the individual, possibly we can learn why we have made a success or a mess of our lives. We can make such an analysis and thereby get understanding, but we never can get certainty. The chemist and the astronomer make fairly accurate predictions because their materials are comparatively simple. There is nothing simple about human behaviours, about newborn babes, or about any one of the billions of cells of its living body. In fact, any one living cell is more complex than the sun. I'm going to jump to page 52. Chapter 4. How do you get that way? The lion jumps through a hoop of fire, the seal juggles a ball on its nose, and the dog stands on its hind legs. They were not born that way. Somebody taught them. They learned. You sit in a chair, hold a magazine, read English. You were not born that way. Somebody taught you. You learned. There is nothing mysterious about it. How else could you get that way? You learn to sit in a chair, hold a magazine, and read English so well that you do it for hours without effort. Transport a Japanese on a magic carpet from the heart of Japan and seat him in a chair. He is awkward and soon very tired. Hundreds of millions of people never learn to sit in chairs, turn the pages of a magazine, or read English. Could they learn? Why not? Could you learn to wear a kimono, sit on the floor, and read Japanese? Of course you could. Any normal person can learn to do practically anything within reason. There is, of course, a vast difference between what you could have learned and what you did learn, between what you are today and what you could or can be. If this were not so, you and I might just as well spend more time on how do you get that way. And if the author can show you how, or could show you how to get the way you are, what is to keep you from learning how to get any other way you want to get within certain limitations? Nothing, save a lack of enough motive power within yourself. With a frail body, you cannot learn to become a heavyweight champion. Sex sets its limitations, especially if you are female. Society says that certain things are unwomanly and puts obstacles in the way of your learning them. But even so, obstacles can be removed. You don't have to accept limitations set by others. If women had accepted the limitations set by men in the past centuries, what a world this would be. Fortunately, limitations can be widened out. However, let's look into this matter of limitations a little further. It is important that you understand just what the author means. You may be marvellously fitted by training for a certain job, but does that job want you? For example, you are admirably qualified to teach gymnastics in a girls' school. Let us suppose that the author has a girls' school and requires a gym teacher. You show him your credentials and exhibit your skill. He likes your looks. He thinks you would make a fine addition to his school. Then he says, by the way, what is your religion? You answer, Methodist. That's too bad. You see, this is a Baptist school and I have only Baptist teachers. But what has religion got to do with teaching gymnastics? You have me stumped, but business is business and some of my patrons are fussy. And with you on my faculty, I can no longer say entire faculty Baptist. Seems absurd, doesn't it? But the society in which you and I live does sometimes take absurd attitudes. What and how many doors have been closed because of the colour of one's skin, or the way one's feet were shod, or the way you handled a knife and a fork, or. You may know the job, like the job, and fail to get it or hold it because you rub something or somebody the wrong way in some trifling, piffling thing. It is a human being who hires and fires, promotes and demotes. Yes, we have experienced that. Or a committee, or a board of trustees, or an electorate. Okay, they dismissed us. Okay, we did something silly, but they dismissed us on the basis they took sides with a trans woman. Yeah. Didn't want to hear what we had to say. really. They took into account, but that was just pretense. They didn't really do much about it. Okay, they didn't really look deep into it. They just decided, well, you did this, you did that. Okay, it wasn't verbal. It was just drawing on their picture by mistake, right, on a display board. So you cheer up another guy that's being picked on continually in the job we were working at. Yeah, try and cheer him up. There happened to be a camera there. Anyway, we're glad to get out of there anyway, because there's just a whole lot of garbage thrown at us, right? Lies told us, etc., etc. Okay, so you may know the job, like the job, and fail to get it or hold it because you rubbed something or somebody the wrong way in some trifling, piffling thing. It is a human being who hires and fires, promotes and demotes, or a committee or a board of trustees or an electorate. No matter how small or big the job, there's always the human equation back of the hiring and firing line, and you know what human beings can do to you. You may be able to climb a rope 100 feet long, but not if that rope runs through a cement ceiling only 10 feet above your head. We all have our limiting factors. It is well that we should know which are due to inborn physical traits, which to lack of training or desire, which to mere incidents of environment. Some of these limiting factors can not be altered, but most of what usually seems to be limiting factors can be altered if you want badly enough to alter them. And so forth. You learned thousands of complicated bodily movements. You trained your motor mechanisms to fit you for your walk in life. But your walk in life was not predetermined the day you were born. Let us say you are a carpenter. You were not destined to be a carpenter when you were born, and you don't have to remain one if you don't wish to. While you were growing up, your motor mechanism could have learned anything anyone has ever done with a normal body. The specific ways into which you organised your manual behaviour depended upon the specific patterns set for you by the home, school and society in which you were trained. These may not be the ways you now desire, but lacking understanding by your parents, or without any definite goal of your own to determine your course of action, you took the path of least resistance and responded to your environment. But you don't have to remain what you are today just because you've been trained that way, or you've been dictated that way, been threatened, you've been forced. You have to be this way or else there will be consequences. At the same time that you were learning to use your motor mechanism for specific purposes and in specific ways, you were also learning to use your voice mechanism. You learned to talk. What language? English? The language of your parents, of the human beings who brought you up. You could just as easily have learned Chinese or Choctaw, or languages sounded like to the newborn. By the time you left school, you had not only learned to speak English, but to think in English. You knew several thousand words. You knew their meanings, and you had acquired ways or habits of using them. You learned to respond to words and to situations with words. By the age of 10, you could cross Asia with Marco Polo, the seas with Magellan, the Alps with Napoleon, with words. You could explore the world, conquer the world with words. You did not always speak the words. You learned to speak them to yourself, to think them and see them. If you got in the habit of doing great things only with words and doing little things with your motor mechanism, you became a daydreamer and built your castles in the air. It will not be easy for you to abandon these thinking habits for doing habits and convert your longings into realities. You may think the most glorious story ever conceived. It is what gets into the film or onto the printed page or into action that counts. The ways you have organised your verbalised behaviour form part of your personality. Meanwhile, you are also learning specific emotional habits to fear, to hate and to love, and you are organising them into emotional behaviour. Now, it is important that hunger, pain, fear, anger, love should move you. They are enormously useful emotions. Without hunger, you would not eat, and without food, you would die. Without love, you would not mate, and your strain would die with you. And unless you can be moved by fear or anger, you cannot flee or fight for your life. These emotions move you. That is why they are called emotions. And the collar buttonish things that can send you into a towering rage or scare you out of your boots. A clock enrages you because it will not stop cuckooing. If you have a cuckoo clock, you throw a shoe at it. a mirror enrages you because it reflects a distorted countenance, you are afraid to smash it. Superstition. Afraid. What or whom were you afraid of at birth? You had an inherited fear response to just two situations. A loud noise, falling or being dropped. A flash of lightning did not scare you, a clap of thunder did. By and by, the mere flash scared you and made you jump, even though you could not hear the thunder. The banging of a door scared you. Your fears became specific. Conditioned fears, they are called. Who or what made you mad when you were a babe? Okay, so all these conditions, like scared of this, scared of that, little girl scared of mice, insects, spiders, whatever, right? You can train your child not to be afraid. But when she goes with other children, they might deliberately scare her with a spider, which totally kills your work. Because we had one of our daughters, we trained her, never be scared of spiders, mice, or whatever. They're only insects. Just put them outside, or just shoo them away or whatever, right? Don't step on them, just chuck them outside or whatever, or get someone to do it for her. But she went to her cousin's house and they scared her with spiders, thinking they were funny. Okay, so undid all our work. She came back and she was scared of spiders and stuff. We went, what the hell? We were teaching you not to be afraid of those things, right? Spiders and bugs and all that sort of stuff. Somebody undermined our works with her. You might say, well, it isn't my fault as I am today. Oh, I'm the product of my parents and my environment. That's true enough. It is up to parents to give their children a good set of habits. But if your parents have been remiss, you don't have to remain a bad-tempered person, a coward, or a shrinking sensitive soul, or a snowflake. You can force yourself to change. You can break the mold that imprisons you and form a new set of habits. Stop a minute and make a list of the things, people, and situations you are afraid of. Ditto for hate and dislike. Then ask yourself whether these specific things, people, and situations are really fearsome or really hateful. See, sometimes we create a fear, it's sick of that. We create a fear, the fear of the unknown. Oh, if I do this, this might happen, and all this sort of stuff, and it doesn't happen. So it's like, well, what was I afraid of? You created that fear, or someone else does it for you. The fear of reprisal, excommunication from your church, lack, loss, and so forth. People do that to you, tend to do that to you, to try to control you. For each item on the list, put this question to yourself. Why do I like this thing? Why do I hate that person? Why am I afraid of this situation? You dislike many ideas and have no real reason for such dislikes. Pressed for an answer, you probably reply, well, I just don't like them. And so the author says again, you are not born with a list of specific likes and dislikes written into your very nature, nor with bents or inclination to talk a particular language, or play this or that set of games, nor with a capacity to engage successfully in any given trade or calling. You were born with a capacity to learn anything and do anything. The society, the community, and the family into which you were born demanded in varying tones and with varying rewards and punishments that you grow up the way they thought you should grow up. Dictation, right? They're dictating how you should grow up. And they probably didn't even grow up that way. Well, unless their parents, did the same thing to them, so they, my parents did it to me, so I'd do it to them. It's the old line that we've heard over the years when we were younger. Unless you understand the differences between your inborn capacity to learn and the things you actually learned, you will never become a first-class psychoanalyst of yourself. Understand this difference and you can remold yourself to your heart's desire. If you were all there at birth, you had all the equipment for learning and all the capacity to become intelligent than any human being ever had. You required no habits, no instincts, no innate tendencies for any special job, pursuit or profession, and had none. But you could learn. What you learned in Hebron, Ohio in 1927 AD was not what you would have learned in Hebron, Palestine in 1927 BC. Human nature does not change, human society does change. If you could not have formed habits as an infant, you could never have become a child. The congenital idiot never learns to behave like a human being. It remains an idiot because specific parts of its habit-forming machinery were left behind. Anything well learned is easily done and long remembered. It becomes a habit. You learned how to dress yourself. You learned it so well that you never forgot it. You do not recall the countless movements you went through this morning in the act of dressing or tying your shoes, and yet they were indefinitely complex and difficult. From the day you were born, you began to learn the specific lessons taught you by the hands that rocked your cradle and the hands that fed you. You were a clean slate on which these nurturing hands could write. Most of what was written on that slate during your early years cannot be easily wiped out. Your basic habits were formed, but you can still do an infinite amount of changing and moulding. When you become a personality, you acquired character. You organized your innate capacity for human behavior along the specific lines of behavior of certain human beings. And having formed certain habits, you had time to learn new things. The fundamental difference between you and an ant is that an ant is born wise and has nothing to learn. You were born ignorant and could learn anything. A practical question often arises. A childless couple wish to adopt some orphan of unknown and possibly worthless parentage. Dare they take the chance? Will not the child of worthless parents inherit immoral tendencies? The answer to this question is no. A normal, healthy child inherits nothing save its physical characteristics, a certain glandular mechanism and a capacity to learn. You were not born with habits of cleanliness, decency, modesty, thrift, stinginess, avarice, selfishness, politeness. None of these habits came with you or any other human being at birth. You were born naked and unashamed. You may be 2, 5 or 10 years in learning to be ashamed of your nakedness. Brought up in one of the Solomon Islands, you would never learn to be ashamed of your own or any other human body. But you would learn to feel undressed if you did not have your nose pin on. To the infant, nothing matters but food, freedom from noxious stimuli, and freedom from restraint. Its growing body is a tremendous transformer of energy. It demands action and more action. The tirelessness of children. It is inexhaustible. The insatiable curiosity of children about everything they can get their hands or eyes on. But mothers want rest and fathers want peace. Don't, they say. Stop, drop it, put it back, let it alone. Parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents and brothers and sisters are all bent on forcing the child this way and that way, so that folks will not be ashamed of you or will be proud of you. The child learns to meet these demands, to adapt itself to circumstances by honesty or by lies, by smiles or by screams. And rest assured that it is just as easy to teach any child to be self-reliant, honest, unselfish, polite and fearless as it is to teach it to be a snivelling coward or a selfish little beast. Why? Because every child can be infuriated, scared, punished, starved. It can also be fondled, bribed, coaxed and soothed. To put it another way, it has various specific mechanisms which can be shocked into action of various kinds. After being shocked a few times, a spark suffices to set them off. These childish habits can make or mar you for life, hence their importance. Many an adult never gets far on any road because he learned to carry all his troubles to his mother. She encouraged him. He never learned self-reliance. Many an adult fails because as a child he never formed the habit of getting along with playmates. He never learned to be a good sport, to play 50-50, to take a joke, to play the game through. He also did not know that the forces, or he did know, that the forces which make or mar us are infinitely numerous, and that we are infinitely complex. Every human being, young or old, is meaningless except as viewed against the background of these forces. And these forces, he admits too, include glandular mechanism, which is inherited and always varies in infinitesimal counts, and which may at any moment of a human's life so change and to change outlooks, bents, likes and dislikes. But these are forces which can and must be studied and recognized and vested with power to mold personalities. To say you are what you are because your ancestors were what they were is to deny the evidence of our eyes, and is without any ground of biologic support. Your ancestors have been talking for, there's no clue, how many thousands of years. Give him a newborn child and in 10 short years he would have him so scared he'll never dare lift his voice above a whisper, or so brave that he'll fear nothing. The hypothesis that you get that way because that way was predetermined for you at birth is an untenable hypothesis. The hypothesis that you can learn anyway is tenable, is biologically sound, and can be made to work. It rests on a firm foundation of experiment and observation, which can be stated categorically thus: no form of behaviour, no trait of character, no tendency towards specific ability to learn or acquire any specific way, form, kind, or degree of human behaviour has ever been definitely proved to be innately related to any colour of skin, shape of head, convolution of brain, size of brain, form of face, or any other inborn physical trait of any normal human being. That is a sweeping statement. It may be so new to you that you will not like it, but try it out on yourself or on your children. It will not bite you nor harm them. No child is a born hog or a born miser. The human hog is a human animal who has never learned the value of social behaviour. The human miser is a moral pervert. To hoard gold is not childish, it is not natural. What does this child care for gold, or for anything but food and freedom? Only with learning do marbles, dolls, tops, drums, and so on come to have value in the child's eyes. What can get it out of them? What can it buy with them? And it is up to the parents to see that the child gets a proper perspective. In one household, the reading of books buys the child parental smiles. In another, skill on the banjo or at the piano or in the kitchen, woodshed or garden. Long before the child can talk, it has learned very specific ways of getting results. With speech come additional ways. And when to action in motor and speech mechanism, there is added a repertoire of emotional reactions. The child has gone far in acquiring an assortment of weapons which will keep the family on the jump. Later in life, tantrums and conniption fits may be of no avail. And even if the adult gives no overt signs of inward rage, tantrums or tears, these emotional reactions will consume energy better spent on a sober tongue or calculated action with hands and feet and so forth. And then the author asks, how many bad habits have you? Do you not resent this question? A candid answer to it will do more than anything he knows to help to get you new and better ones. Probably the commonest of all bad habits is sheer inability to live at peace with oneself and one's family. Have you ever lost a job because you could not measure up to it with your hands or your voice or your head? Rather, is it not because you could not get along with somebody? Or somebody was out to get you, right? Make your life miserable. We've experienced that within a job. Bit of power gets to the head. Bit of responsibility. Too much mustard or vinegar. Being fired may be the very incentive you need. Having given hostages to fate in the form of a wife and baby, you are driven to look the situation over in words. That is what words are for, to manipulate the universe from a chair or a bed or while fishing. You play and resolve with words. You arrive at a decision. But what is of more consequence is the way you go about getting results out of that decision, so that you and your wife and your baby can eat the results. Many a man today is president of this or that concern because of some particular time he was fired or fell in love or was presented with an heir, son, next in line. Specifically, then you can change your ways when and only when you have defined your problem and got the drive behind it. That is, when you have decided just what way you want to be and where you want to go. You must do your own psychoanalyzing. It is literally true that there is no help like self-help. There is no help like self-help. And the first step in self-help is to know yourself. Take stock of yourself. And remember that you are in your own hands now. You are your own trainer. You are the captain of your ship, the master of your destiny. But you cannot train yourself to do new tricks if you cannot make yourself try the trick once. It is the first lesson that is the hardest. After a few lessons, it becomes as easy as pie. It is a habit, and a bad habit if it enslaves you. You are an actor on a specific stage. Can you get more out of your part? Can you qualify for a bigger part? You play a speaking or a manual labour part, or more likely a part which combines action in both voice and motor mechanisms. The school teacher's part is largely verbal, the farmer's manual, the stenographer is about equal parts of verbal and manual. You require no expert to tell you whether you are fitted to play a verbal or manual role, or one which combines both. How skillfully do you play your part? How well do you know your world of words, or your world of objects? and how well can you manipulate it? Can you play the piano, or the typewriter, or tennis, or golf, or drive a car, or wash dishes, or tread the maze of crowded streets, or manage a home or an office or a desk, easily, efficiently, without sweat and fret and emotional strain? In brief, like a habit. Can you use words as tools, as building blocks, as structural plans? Can you build serviceable structures with them, structures which get results, which sell your wares, which carry your ideas to your listeners or to your readers, which manipulate the past and present and design a future which can be translated into reality? If not, why not? If your manual or verbal ways are not getting you where you want to go, what is the trouble? Lack of skill? If so, can you by practice become more perfect, or are you on the wrong track? As a rule, you have to convince yourself before you can convince anyone else. It's like you can't help anyone else. You got to help yourself first, and then you can help them. If you have built up plenty and you have access, well, you can go help people, right? But if people, you try to help people in other ways, and they just keep using and abusing you, well, it's no point. They don't want to be helped. You say, well, there's a problem there, bro. There's your problem. You're addicted to drugs and you're stealing and all this sort of stuff. Cut it out, man. Stop doing that sort of thing. That's why you're having problems in your life. Going to court, going to jail, whatever, But if they just keep doing it, no matter how much you help them, and they use you and abuse you, take you for a ride, just want you for your money and whatever you've got, then you're wasting your time. They have to want to be helped. Truly want to be helped. Because it's a habit, What they do is a habit, which soon becomes their addiction. So they keep doing it. And they can't break away from it. Even they say, oh, my life's a pile of poop. I wish I could give up this. How do I do it? And you give them suggestions for free. They're like, oh, yeah. Oh, I can't give up smoking. Oh, I just carry on. I can't give up drugs or alcohol. They've just shot themselves in their own foot. As a rule, you have to convince yourself before you can convince anyone else. You must put your heart into your part. If you do not love your role or love somebody or something so well that love drives you, you cannot put into your part half as much as energy as you might. Fear may enable you to beat a bull to a fence and hatred to build a spite fence, but love of home, of wife, of children, of fellow men, of fair play, of decency, of honour, of adventure, of victory, justice, etc., etc., of country, of immortality, leads to real achievement. You have become so complexly organised that you will often find yourself pushed to determine the driving force behind your actions, or even behind any specific act. Your reasons are likely to be I like, or I don't like. The real reason you will be that your actions or specific acts are driven by your visceral and emotional habits. You may so love your wife that a hateful role seems good because of the contents of the envelope on Saturday night, but hating a role and playing it well is about as difficult as eating a pie and keeping it, and very few people can do it. The microbe hunters who have everlasting obligated the world to them so loved their work that they forgot to fear poverty and death. Apart from the technique or skill that you put into your role in the play of life, the only important factor is how well you have organised your drive. If fear has become the dominant factor in your life, your way is indeed narrow and your horizon shut in. Some people are so dominated by fear that they cannot speak above a whisper or take a deep breath. Their birthright of curiosity to know everything and impulse to do everything stagnates in the bottom of a deep well. Love and fear are incompatible bedfellows, and the union is never happy for anyone or fertile in socially useful action. Less abject and despicable than fear is hatred, but fatal to more people. They are true twins, spawn of ignorance and brutality. They do more to wreck homes and despoil the earth than famines and plagues. If your way seems to lead nowhere, try to find out what holds you back. If the role you play gets no hand, try to discover wherein your performance has failed. Get a bigger drive into it. If you cannot put your soul into it because you hate it or fear it, and cannot master your hate or fear, change to another role, one you can put your soul into. But into it you must put some drive and action. It doesn't come to be by mere wishing Oh, I wish. You got to put some effort into it and take action. Without love, the stage of human affairs loses its main drive and its only creative force. Love does rule the world, or a world when it has fewer fears, jealousies, and hatred to compete with. You will probably find it impossible to love your enemies, but you can help make it possible for the coming generation to hate fewer enemies. Well, I can use in your social circle, right? You might have some enemies. They're jealous of you, whatever. You can use reverse psychology on that. When they come at you with all this hatred, all this sort of stuff, all these accusations, gossips, whatever, we can use reverse psychology. Turn it around, because they may come to you one day and say, "Oh, I really need some food. I've got no food. Oh, I need some money. Okay. Do you remember the day when you were just so nasty, okay, and you went around spreading this gossip, saying that I was this, I was that, when I'm not? That really hurt. So no, sorry, you have to go find someone else that'll give you the money." And you go, "Oh, come on." No. Reverse psychology, right? That's what we discovered through a radio article when someone was putting us in that sort of situation, giving us hell, and then the next day they wanted all this money so they could buy their drugs or whatever it was. Do you remember yesterday when? Oh, yeah, but I didn't mean it. Well, then why'd you say it? Okay, it was not nice. It was nasty. So no, go ask your girlfriend for it. Your ex, right? Go ask your girlfriend for it. They just hooked up with some girl, right? Don't come to me and ask for it. Okay, how much of your brain do you use? Okay. We went online and we actually thought, well, what Chat GPT would say about this particular book, right? So we asked it, for some information. It says, give us further information. So we put this little piece here about the author. Dorsey undertook the writing of his first book, Why We Behave Like Human Beings, 1925, for popular consumption, and so lucidly were the most abstract findings of science presented, so trenchant was the style that its success was immediate. It was followed by Nature of Man, 1927, to some extent a condensation of the former book, The Evolution of Charles Darwin, 1927, a sympathetic study of the great naturalist, Young Low, 1927, a reprint of his only work of fiction, originally published in 1917, Hows and Whys of Human Behaviour, 1929, which we just covered, a collection of magazine articles dealing with everyday problems of living, and Man's Own Show, Civilization, 1931, published posthumously, which was a continuation of Why We Behave Like Human Beings, and was regarded by Dorsey as its most important summary of man's place in nature. We presented this because that's all we could find, because everything else wanted us to sign up, and it didn't really give us any information, so that was basically useless, so we just posed it that. And it replied saying, based on the human information provided about George A. Dorsey above, works, particularly Hows and Whys of Human Behaviour, 1929. Here's a brief chapter by chapter overview and an overall pros and cons review, okay, specifically for our YouTube channel. Chapter by chapter overviews, hypothetical based on typical content of such books. Okay, introduction to human behaviour. Dorsey likely starts by introducing the scope of human behaviour, emphasising its complexity and the various factors that influence it. 2. Biological foundations, explores the biological basis of behaviour, discussing topics such as genetics, brain structure, and thus the influence of hormones on behaviour. 3. Psychological perspectives, covers psychological theories and perspectives on human behaviour, including Freudian, behavioural and cognitive theories. 4. Social and cultural influences, examines how social norms, cultural traditions and societal structures shape human behaviour and more. We asked it for the pros and cons of this particular book, and it gave us this overall pros and cons review. Pros: accessible writing style. Dorsey's lucid and trenchant style makes complex scientific findings understandable for a popular audience. Comprehensive scope, covers a wide range of topics related to human behaviour, making it a valuable introductory text. Practical application, provides practical insights and applications for everyday life, addressing common problems and challenges. Cons. Dated content. Written in the 1920s, some of the scientific knowledge and social perspectives may be outdated, so you go find more up-to-date information, which could be an extension of what he said way back in the 1920s. Ideas change, right? Ideas have to become modernised. Out of date, like it suggests here. Limited depth. Due to its aim for popular consumption, it may lack the depth and rigour found in academic texts. Bias and perspective. Dorsey's own views and biases may influence the interpretation of scientific findings. Maybe. And it came to a conclusion. Hows and Whys of Human Behaviour by George A. Dorsey appears to be a seminal work in popular science literature, offering accessible insights into the complexities of human behaviour, while it provides a comprehensive overview and practical application. Readers should approach it with awareness of its historical context and potential limitations in depth and objectivity. Overall, it remains a valuable resource for those interested in understanding the fundamental aspects of why humans behave the way they do. This review structure should provide a good framework for you, via our YouTube channel, allowing you to delve into each aspect more deeply as needed on your personal level, right? Okay, so if you liked that particular book, in this video book review, then click on the like button, subscribe to our channel, add your comments below this video, what you think of this particular book and this particular video, and we'll get back to you on those comments as soon as we can. And then go share it with everybody you know, because it could give them insight into what and why they are like the way they are. Okay. Again, here's the contents page, many subjects you can have a read on. We can leave the link to this book that we found underneath this video.